Where land meets water, an invitation lingers, not just between elements, but between versions of yourself. You could remain on shore, where it's safe, familiar, predictable, or you could cross into the unknown. I'm Shannon Keegan, and this is Stories from the Water, where we dive into the courage it takes to begin, the resilience that keeps us moving forward, and the wisdom that only emerges in the space between. All right. I'm here today with the Clever Dicks to hear all about your swim stories, your podcast, what you've got going on down there in New Zealand. So tell me, who wants to go first? I got Jim and Duncan here.
Oh, okay. So I'm Jim. Um, yeah, my swimming sort of started after I'm a post runner swimmer.
Ah, one of
My
those.
yeah, I was an avid jogger for many years, and then the legs gave out, so I converted over to swimming when I was about 40. Got quite into the ocean, got very involved with surf lifesaving for quite a long time. And yeah, that just became my sort of happy space and in the place where I got some exercise. Mostly I do my swimming just to support my eating habits. Um,
Ah, one of those. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So that's kind of me. I enjoy the occasional challenge. You know, I'm very much a middle of the packer. So yeah, that's kind of my swim story. It's what keeps me going.
Yeah, well, but tell me a little bit though, because I don't know, my audience is pretty broad. A lot of US people though. So what's it like in New Zealand? Like, do you just learn how to swim right after you're born, or is it like in school, or I don't know, just give me a little perspective on that.
Okay, so I actually grew up in Rhodesia or Zimbabwe as it is now.
Ah, aha,
So
okay.
I've been in New Zealand about 30 years. So where I grew up, it was the tropics. Everybody swam because that's how you stayed out of the sun, basically. Well, you stayed cool. So I kind of was always in and out of pools when I was young, but we couldn't afford to join the swim squad or anything like that. So it really was just a sort of playful sort of splashing. And that sort of just took a back seat for a while. But when I started with surf lifesaving, I thought that I saw some of the other dads had actually become lifeguards. So I thought, oh, this is a good time to actually get more water involved. And yeah, then I just started diving in. I joined a little fitness squad, found some good mates who I'm still mates with now, and just more swimming and sort of carried it on. And then I met Duncan when he came over. He emigrated from South Africa, and a little bit worried about this really noisy dude who's coming in, but he's been really useful in sort of giving me more challenges, and I've ended up doing things that I probably would never have done otherwise.
I see one of those influences.
Yeah,
I
so
want
just a little bit about sort of Auckland. We're truly blessed with the ability to swim here. We're on a very narrow part of the country. Um, if I want to go over from the east coast to the west coast, it's about a 40-minute drive, and I'm on the other side of the country, really.
Oh, wow.
So you can choose your place depending on the weather. If it's a nasty easterly, we'll go up to a little peninsula, about half an hour's drive, and we've got a sheltered bay. It's absolutely awesome. During summer, the sea temperature is about 23 Celsius. I don't know how to convert that to Fahrenheit.
I got my
Um,
chart handy. 73.
so,
Glorious. Yeah.
yeah, it's really pleasant. And even in winter, it'll get down to 12 or 13 degrees. It doesn't get
53. Yeah.
massively cold.
Hmm.
So we swim all year, yeah, in the sea and in the pools. Yeah, it's very nice here.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. I'm curious just about that a little bit about that you kind of just blushed over the surf life saving involvement and what's that organization? You said there's other dads maybe that were, is that what you said? Dads that were
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Uh,
yeah, so I think there's a little more there.
the Surf Lifesaving in New Zealand is principally a volunteer organization, unlike some places in the world. There are a few people that are paid, but it's mostly volunteers, and it's all really a very club scene. So
Yeah.
you'll go down to your local club. Um, we got involved because we wanted to get our kids kind of ocean safe as opposed to just water safe. And I just got sort of sucked into the whole sort of club aspect of it. We, did junior coaching and sort of carried on with it. I got into my swimming, got my surf lifeguard award, and then I started doing the regular patrols. So again, it's typically a kind of volunteer-based system there. So you've got a group of people just looking after a beach during the summer.
Wow.
And then I just got more and more involved. So I started doing instructing and examining. So, a lot of what I got out of it was seeing young people, especially young people, just growing and becoming more confident and, getting some leadership skills and also just providing that service back to the community. So I spent about 21 years just with Surf Life Saving. I've sort of stepped back a little bit. It is an organization that should be sort of youth orientated. And you do need to have new ideas coming through. So I've sort of stepped back a little bit, but yeah, I did 20 years with it, and yeah, it's a very cool organization. You get to drive the little, we call them IRBs, the inflatable rescue boats.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You zoom around on those in the surf, and yeah, it's great fun.
That's amazing. Wow. And you said you got involved because you wanted your kids to be ocean safe. So in general, kids are taught to swim, but not necessarily taught to be ocean safe. Sorry, I
So
did
in
get
New
into this.
Zealand, it's quite interesting. We've New Zealand's got one of the worst sort of statistics in terms of drowning in the world. We've
They
got
say that in
so
America
much.
too. So
Yeah.
Well, we've got so much
you've
coastline
got a
and
lot
so
of water.
much.
Yeah.
So we've got a challenge there. There's a lot of kind of emphasis on trying to get people water safe. Like a lot of places in the world, we've got a lot of immigration coming in. So you'll get people that might be coming from the Indian subcontinent. They've never been close to the sea in their lives. So, we're trying to focus a little bit on how do we get everybody to be water safe. It's it's challenging, getting into a pool is like most places in the world is a bit expensive. So,
Mm.
how do you
Hmm.
get kids to go along and get um, water lessons? So in Auckland, where we live, kids under 16 get into the pools for free, but just getting into a pool doesn't always make them water safe. It just means that they're comfortable playing in the water. So,
Right. Yeah, I
yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Wow. Amazing. I can't wait to go to New Zealand one day. Um, let's hear a little bit of Duncan's story.
Yep. So
You still awake?
Jim, Jim was actually the instructor for my eldest daughter, who also followed the surf life saving scenario. So I can vouch that he knows a little bit about surf life saving, but we won't let his head get too big, right? Um, so yeah, my story is probably pretty similar to Jim's. I grew up in South Africa. I had a running background, so I did sort of track and cross country as a youngster. I came across to the States and did a couple of years at Western Kentucky University, which was pretty cool. Um, and long story short was I got injured probably in my early 20s, 23, 24. And through complete frustration, I sort of packed up all my running gear into a big black bag and went and threw it in the rubbish dump. And I went down to the local pool really just to try and vent and move because I was so used to just exercising and moving. So yeah, I probably every time I swim in front of people. I get offers for swim coaching and technical assistance because my technique's not great. But I'm pretty headstrong and I'm pretty stubborn and I can sort of swim all day at a fair pace, but it's not the prettiest of things. With that said, I've never been injured, so something sort of mechanically there is pretty sort of decent. Um, Swimming for me has been I guess an opportunity to just reset and sort of assist me with life. If that makes any sense, it just helps get rid of stress and makes me feel better about the day, better about myself. I have 5 kids. I've got twins twice. Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I was really evil in a previous life, I think. So I'm being punished for it now. But the swimming helps to, again, just find a little bit of me time, put my head under the water. I don't need to listen to anybody other than Jim occasionally. And yeah, that's why I swim. South Africa is a bit messy at the moment. Just from I guess when you start looking at young kids and their futures in terms of finding employment, and just general safety and well-being, it's a little bit rough around the edges. So with 5 kids, we sort of made the call that we were either going to be sort of, in our 60s and 70s, my wife and I sitting in South Africa, and our kids would be all over the world, or we can give it a crack and immigrate. So we immigrated late. I immigrated, I was 42. And it's quite interesting when you come from South Africa to New Zealand, you divide all of your wealth by 10 straight off the bat because the rand
Wow.
is worth nothing. So yeah, we're pretty much starting again in New Zealand. And my biggest regret, Shannon, is that we didn't do this 20 years ago, right? It's the
Mm.
most unbelievable country that I've come across. I've traveled quite a bit through various careers in previous lives. And like Jim said, we are absolutely just spoilt for choice. We can fall out of our cars at sort of one of multiple beaches, literally uncountable beaches where you can literally just stop and swim safely. The East Coast is flat as a pancake most of the
Wow.
time. West Coast is quite rough, so the guys tend to sort of do, surfing and water sports and sort of the more exciting water sports on the West Coast and lots of swimming on the East Coast. Very lucky to be here.
I'm training for a 50-mile swim this year, but this isn't just about distance. Every stroke teaches me something new about moving efficiently through the water, trust, and resilience. I want to share these lessons with you. Want to explore them together? Join me at the water's edge, my virtual community where everything changes. Hesitation meets courage, comfort meets challenge, potential becomes movement, and individual meets community. Tap the join link in the show notes. Very cool. So
Yeah.
how long ago was it that you said you were 42, but how long ago was that? Like how long have you been in New Zealand
8 years.
now? 8
8
years,
years.
okay.
Yeah. I know I look 65, Shannon, but
You
it's
do not. I thought maybe it was last year. It's like, wow. Okay. So, but you had already been swimming kind of just to deal with life. So then you come to New Zealand, you just pick up with a squad, or how did that go?
Yeah, so well, if I go back to South Africa, we there's a very famous rugby stadium, right? Us South Africans and the Kiwis play rugby.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a stadium called Ellis Park, and they've got a swimming pool attached to it in the city center. And it was one of the only outdoor pools in my location, in my area that I lived. And I used to go on the weekends and just swim up and down to get a little bit of sun. And it was a 50-meter pool.
Mm.
So a little bit, it was a little bit sort of harder. And I actually met an Australian guy that was like a real proper swimmer. Um, and long story short was he invited me to come and join them, and they were quite serious swimmers. They were he had he had a proper technical Australian kiddie upbringing with very technical swimming and squad sets.
Mm.
And he had been to sort of world master games and all of that type of stuff. And yeah, we got into that. And after a couple of years, we started swimming also a pretty iconic sort of event. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned on an island in Cape Town called Robben Island.
Hmm.
And there was an annual swim from Robben Island to the mainland, called the Robben Island Swim.
Hmm.
And it was for me at that stage, it was one of those sort of unachievable goals. The water was cold, the water was like 12 degrees.
Wow.
It was quite a big piece of water, so it was quite rough. As the crow flies, it was only 7.5 kilometers, but for me, I mean, that was like,
That's a lot. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, and the cold water and ocean, like
yeah,
those are high
yeah,
bars for a lot of people.
yeah, for like a newbie, right?
No, come on now. We're trying to
So,
inspire people on my podcast. I don't know what you guys do on your podcast. I try to inspire people to come to
yeah.
the water.
No, no, we generally try and scare the shit out of them, really. So,
Good to set the stage. Okay.
yeah. Um, so yeah, this Robben Island swim was it was the type of swim where they limited it to 100 people.
Hmm.
Um, you would catch a ferry from, Cape Town waterfront, the V&A waterfront through to Robben Island. And I can just remember being so excited, right? You're on this ferry and the waves are sort of breaking and splashing on the ferry, and the water just looked so deep and so cold, and everybody was nervous, and it was really just different. Um,
Hmm.
and then you get dropped off on this island. Um, and the organizers used to wait until the tides and the weather was correct before allowing you to swim. And every swimmer had to have their own boat with them to look after them. So the most challenging part of my swim, now bearing in mind I had grown up in Johannesburg, which is, the closest ocean is probably 600 kilometers away. So
Wow.
all of my swimming at that stage was in the pool, um, and oceans were for holidays, where
Hmm.
you went down as a family and you sort of got the boogie board out and bought ice creams.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, memories from that swim would be you you're starting out in this ice cold water. It's all skins. There's no wetsuits.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um, you've got 100 boats out in front of you, and you now need to find your boat.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So, so there were guys that had like balloons tied to them, and the fast guys were obviously, you could easier to find your boat. But our plan was pretty simple. We were like, listen, I'm going to be the guy on the extreme left-hand side with the poor technique splashing away. You find me. If I don't find you, I'm going to just carry on, and eventually you'll find me. So it it for somebody at that stage that wasn't used to the ocean, it was quite hairy.
Yeah.
That Cape Town water is cold. Um, it's like a dark black top ocean, from
Mm.
from Robben Island, and there's a lot of kelp, which is like a big fat seaweed that sort of sits
Yeah.
just underneath the surface of the
It
water.
wraps around your foot and tickles
Yeah,
you.
you
Yeah.
swim into that, and you all of a sudden, screaming like an opera singer because you don't know what the hell it is, and you're nervous, and then a little seal pops up and has a look at you and makes sure that you're okay. So it was a whole new world. And
Yeah.
yeah, I pretty much was addicted from
What,
that moment.
how
Yeah.
did you get the idea to do this swim?
Um, I think it had gained a little bit of popularity in South Africa. It had quite a big sponsor. It was an annual event. And I think a lot of the guys that lived in Cape Town obviously trained in the ocean and they would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And in South Africa, there was a bit of a um, I don't know how to term it, but there was always the guys at the coast and the guys in Johannesburg that would have this healthy competition around, who are the best swimmers and who's the toughest. And long story short was a whole bunch of the inland swimmers decided to go down and teach the coastal swimmers a lesson
I
about
see, I
how
see.
to not
Okay.
swim. But yeah,
Okay.
it's I was I sort of got wrapped into a group called madswimmer.com.
Mm-hmm.
The founder of that group was a hell of a nice guy and a great swimmer called Jean Craven. And Jean used to, um, well, how it started for Jean, I guess, was Jean got married and was honeymooning in Tarifa in Spain. And obviously, there's the Gibraltar Strait swim.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on the beach. And I think him and his best man were chatting. And he sort of said, I wonder if you think I can make it to Morocco, you know? And his best man said, I'll bet you 10,000 Rand you can't. Long story short, the type of guys that we hang around with, he immediately went hunting and trying to find a boat and he was going to prove his best man wrong. And he did the swim, right? And he completed it. And long story short is his best man gave him the prize money or the bet afterwards, and he felt guilty. So he donated that to the local charity, which happened to be a little school, a little orphanage. And obviously he felt good about that, and he decided thereafter every year they were going to do some crazy swim um, and donate some funds that they could raise to the local charity and to a charity back in South Africa. And I got involved with these guys, which took me on a couple of really cool adventures over the years. And ultimately, 10 years later, having immigrated and landed here in New Zealand, I met these old guys, the Salty Dogs. Um, and I wanted to try and, I guess do something similar. So we've done a lot of really sort of crazy stuff in New Zealand as well over the last couple of years, which has been pretty cool. Yeah.
Nice. So you've started some swims there? Is that what I'm understanding? Like like that raise money for charity? Like or just crazy swims.
Oh, a little bit of both. So, I mean,
Okay.
Duncan's kind of the main organizer. We've done like a 12 by 1 mile all day event,
Oh yeah. Those are fun.
come down and do that and donate to charity.
Mm.
My big swim, there's we've got a rescue helicopter in Auckland that basically is a charity organization. So, they have all sorts of fundraising things. So they have one of the in the Hauraki Gulf, which is just this gulf really close to Auckland. There's an island where lots of people live, Waiheke Island. So you swim from there back to Auckland. It's a 20K swim. So they call that the Chopper Challenge. So that was my sort of long swim. So there's a fair number of sort of charity events that occur. So when Duncan came and wanted to do crazy things, he's kind of started stirring the pot over here and started getting people swimming cold. I used to be quite
Uh-huh.
in a wetsuit until he took my wetsuit off and destroyed it.
Oh no.
But he was kind of one of the initiators to get ice swimming going in New Zealand. So, that's some of the crazy stuff that we've been doing. So I think we've done sort of 4 or 5 years into doing some pretty cold swims. Yep.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Um, I understand, Duncan, you might have done some kind of longer swims too. Is that, I mean, you did the 7.5 at Robin Island, and then did you find any compulsion to swim? Like you said, you fell in love with it, right? You're kind of immersed in
Yeah.
this ocean culture, and then where did that take you?
Yeah, so we've done some sort of straight after Robben Island. I guess we started doing some local swims in South Africa across some lakes and some dams. The longest one at that stage that I can recall doing was across a lake or a dam called Sterkfontein Dam. I would like
Mm,
to hear you pronounce that. No.
nice try.
Yes, that's the real Afrikaans name. But that was a 16-kilometer swim across a really beautiful sort of piece of water just before the Drakensberg mountain range in South Africa. And if there's anybody in the States that ever wants to go and see some amazing sort of mountainous areas and do some hiking, the Drakensberg in South Africa is an amazing place to go.
Cool.
In fact, it's also a little punt for South Africa. It's just down the road from a place called Midmar, or Howick is the little town. And Midmar, the Midmar Mile, happens to be the biggest open water race in the world.
Mm.
So they get 18,000 swimmers over a 2-day period swimming a mile.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
and it happens to be in this little town in South Africa, which not very many people are aware of. So yeah, that's their claim to fame, the biggest open water race in the world. I've done that multiple times, I think about 23 times, which was also my little stint of sort of getting into open water swimming and lake swimming. Um,
Nice.
but the journey with Mad Swimmer was pretty cool. We did a swim across the Bering Strait. Probably must be 15 years ago now, but we
Wow.
sort of try to follow in the footsteps of Lynn Cox. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so we flew from Johannesburg to London, London to Newark, Newark to I don't know, somewhere in Canada, Canada
Wow.
to Nome.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Eventually, we landed up in Anchorage. And every time we flew, the planes got smaller and smaller. And
Yeah, I bet.
eventually, I don't know if there was a TV program about Nome and the gold digging that
Mm.
happened in this little town. And we based ourselves there um, before we flew out literally to Little Diomede Island and sort of were housed and looked after by a group of Eskimos effectively,
Wow.
which was again just being there, you had to pinch yourself to sort of have a reality check, on
Yeah.
where you were and what you were doing and the swim itself was so in the Bering Strait itself is probably 60 kilometers
Mm-hmm.
wide. Within that strait, there's two islands. One is
Mm.
called Diomede, and the one is called Little Diomede. And the swim that we did was from the big island to the little island. The big island is based in Russia, Russian territory, and the small island is based in US territory. So effectively, you swam from Russia to the US, and you swim across the date line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, I mean, the swim itself was ridiculously amazing. You're on this little wooden craft to get out there. You've got a Canadian dude with some rifle that looks like it's fallen out of some museum. I'm pretty sure if he fired it, he probably would have killed himself because it would have exploded. But that was there apparently to protect us from walruses, because there were some walruses floating around and cruising around. The water was cold. It was 6 degrees. We swam that swim. It's the only swim I've ever done in a wetsuit, and
Oh
to
my
this
gosh.
day, I regret it. I wish I had given it a go without a wetsuit. I probably would not have been able to finish it
Yeah.
in that temperature. But I do regret it. It's this amazing swim, and it's like, yeah, I did it in a wetsuit. So
Oh, come on. Use amazing swim. We'll just hold on to that.
yeah, but
How
that
far,
was
how far, you said it was 60 kilometers for the whole strait. Remind me the distance between big and little
six and a half kilometers.
6.5 kilometers. That's a lot. That's a lot in 42 or 6 degrees. I mean, that's
Yeah,
like,
it was cold, man. It was.
yeah.
Um, but like I said, the whole location and the whole experience was just ridiculous. Um, and prior to prior to us having done that swim, it had been completed 3 times before.
Wow.
There were 6 of us, 6 South Africans, and there were 2 Russian dudes that came and met us and did this swim with us. So we got 8 swimmers across
Wow.
on that day. Um, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been done since then
Since, yeah.
again. So that raised quite a bit of awareness, and we managed to drive some funds for the charities that we were involved with at that stage. Um, but of course, it sort of it just it bites you, right? Because you're all of a sudden thinking of, well, what's next? And
Yeah. What else could I do if I can swim between countries across a date line and six
yeah,
degrees?
yeah. And I mean, like I said, I'm not a big guy. I'm not a natural swimmer. I swim okay, but I mean, I never swam as a kid. I sort of, I guess, at 25, jumped into a pool. I knew how to swim. I could float. But I sort of, taught myself how to swim at 25, and then you sort of, you look at this Eskimo standing next to you, and you're having a celebratory hug, and you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. Um, and the things that swimming in this particular case, or sport in general, can do for individuals and for communities is insane. It's really special. And I find, yeah, without having something stupid on the horizon, that I struggle, man. I need to have a goal down the line. So yeah, that was one crazy swim. We've also swum across Lake Malawi,
Hmm.
um, which is obviously in the country of Malawi in the middle of Africa. And again, a completely different experience, even from, I consider myself maybe not African, because there's a whole debate as to if a white person can be African and all of those things. But I'm born and bred in Africa, and when you fly out of South Africa into Malawi, you literally, South Africa's pretty developed. Well, it was. It's struggling at the moment. But you land in Malawi, and you're in third world Africa. You know, um, and we rented a bus, a minivan, and we all piled into the minivan. The one guy was on his own adventure, his own mission. He rented a motorcycle, and he wanted to travel from the airport through to the lake by bike, through Africa, on his own on this little adventure. And his little adventure was he actually broke down this motorbike. I'm assuming they don't rent too many motorbikes in Malawi, so it was potentially not serviced and up to scratch. So he broke down. And obviously, you're a stranger in this African country. Um, and you're now stuck on the side of the road and the sun is setting. So he was sweating a little bit. There was no cell phone signal. He couldn't get a hold of any of us to come and find him. And he sort of waved down we call them minivans. They're effectively taxis.
Hmm.
But how a taxi works in Africa is, if you can imagine, it's a Toyota Hiace. So a lot of it, I guess in America, for example, you guys would use them as airport transfers or shuttles.
Hmm. Okay.
But it's a little minivan that fits 12 people.
Okay.
On average, uh, African people would fit 16 to 18 people in there,
Hmm.
plus a whole ton of luggage on the roof. And this little minivan skidded to a halt. All 16 people piled out, and he was like, "Oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen now. And obviously, they greet him and they're friendly. He doesn't really understand what the hell they're talking about. But the driver kicks everybody out of the bus. They pick up his motorbike. They put his motorbike in this minivan. They pile all the people back in the minivan. And they drive him to the hotel, and they, drop him off and give him a high five and say, "Cheers, mate. Like, have a good time.
Wow.
But there was also a very special swim. You go on a boat um, to effectively the far side of Lake Malawi. The night before, the guys that we were with, that accommodated us, basically the catering staff from the hotel came with us on the boats. And if you could imagine reading, one of those old books from like the 1920s where it was real colonial, um, and they had set up a buffet literally in the middle of nowhere on a beach on the other side of Lake Malawi
Wow.
with these big fire drums cooking meat and vegetables, and everybody was in white, no, chef top hats. And we had this unbelievable sort of buffet of amazing food under the African stars. Um, Everybody had to bring their own tent. So you pitched a tent on the beach, and you slept under the stars. And the next morning
Wow.
you woke up, chucked your tent into the back of the boat, and we swam across Lake Malawi, 28 kilometers.
Wow. Amazing.
There's the horror stories that everybody talks about before one of these big swims. It's like, what should I be scared of? Crocodiles. And apparently it was crocodiles and hippos.
Hmm.
And the risk areas were the first 500 meters and the last 500 meters, because the crocodiles and the hippos apparently don't go deep. So
Mm.
it's really just, that first 500 meters, I made sure I was in good company and there was a lot of swimmers around me.
You got to be the one guy at the back. You're to be the back.
But yeah, that was a pretty cool swim. Um, yeah.
I think you summed it up really well when you said, the things that swimming, you said sport, but swimming, we're swimming podcasts, so we'll just focus on that, can
Yes.
do for an individual and for a community is so powerful. And so it sounds like that, like setting these goals. And then, I mean, the adventure is just this amazing byproduct of having set these goals and seeing,
Yeah.
I guess, what can you dig in a little bit to like how it's empowered you to fulfill like these amazing goals? Like, has it empowered you in your life, like outside of the pool?
Well, I mean, at its very basic level, I imagine, having done a little bit of traveling and a little bit of adventuring, from being in South Africa, I guess that ultimately gave me the confidence to be able to immigrate and
Yeah.
take my family literally to the other side of the world and start a new life. So, at its basic level, I'd like to think that it's enabled me to sort of put my family on a whole new trajectory and a whole new path, as
Wow.
one. Some other, examples, I guess, are um, the people that you meet. I do a bit of swimming with a special needs swimmer. Jim also swims with Shazil. He's part of our little group, but Shazil, he's known as Batman in the swimming community. So he's Batman. I'm Robin. Jim's the Joker, and he's got the mental capacity of about a 5-year old. Um,
Mm.
so he's 25 years old. He's probably a head taller than me. He's a lot stronger than me. He's an awesome swimmer. He's been swimming since he was 6, but all in the pool.
Hmm.
And he had a coach, Sarah O'Dwyer, who basically approached me and said, "Hey, she's got this young special needs dude, and would I help her out and swim with him? And that's now 5 years ago.
Wow.
We swim together about 3 times a week. Once during the week, we swim in the pool, and then on a Saturday and Sunday, we join Jim's Salty Dogs, and we do an ocean swim. But for example, I've done a 20-kilometer swim around Rangitoto Island, which is a big volcano here in Auckland, with
Oh,
Shazil,
wow. Neat.
and we swim on each other. Like literally, his brief before he swims is stay close, do not move away from Duncan. So I'll swim 20 kilometers where I'm swallowing his wake every third stroke, and I get clonked on the head by his hand.
Oh,
Uh,
man.
you got to make sure that he's drinking. You got to make sure that he stays focused, because if he loses focus, he just wanders off and starts swimming into the sunlight. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Again, I would not ever have had that opportunity to, I guess, engage or try to help somebody else. And the funny thing about that is that, I'm the support swimmer, and technically he needs me. But the reality is, like I always tell his mom, Shamima, is that I actually need him, because it's so easy for me to just, it's windy outside. I'm not going to swim today. But
Yeah.
if I know Shazil's standing at the beach waiting for me, I'm there. You know.
Hmm.
Um, everybody, that whole question of like, aren't you nervous when you go out into the ocean? And the reality is, when I go out on my own, yes, I'm nervous. When I go out with Shazil, I don't think about it, right? Because all I'm doing is I'm thinking about looking after him. So
Yeah.
I reckon he's actually my support swimmer, and he's helping me more than what I'm helping him. Um, yeah, so yeah, there's so many examples, right? This us community that Jim was the treasurer for Ice Swimming New Zealand, but he what's your famous saying?
Oh, there was no treasure, so there's a point of being a treasurer if there's no treasure.
So
What a, go ahead.
sorry. Um, so the founder of Ice Swimming International is a guy by the name of Ram Barkai.
Yeah.
Ram is an Israeli dude that landed up living in South Africa. And Ram happened to be the person that had sponsored and initiated the Robben Island swim.
Hmm.
So I got to know Ram in South Africa. I Prior to immigrating, I was lucky enough to go through and do one of Ram's ice swims in South Africa. And when I got to New Zealand, I was asking around saying like, hey guys, like, what's the coldest water we can find here in New Zealand? And long story short is, we managed to sort of set up a little ice swimming New Zealand, um, what would you call it?
Association. Yeah.
Association. We have managed to put together some amazing people. I guess the two key guys being Susan Sherwin, who is a 60 something year old, maybe 63-year-old school teacher who's done the New Zealand Triple Crown. So she's done Cook Strait, Lake Taupo, Fovo Strait. She's just done the Australian Triple Crown as well. So um, she's the lead of Ice Swim in New Zealand, and Roger Soulsby is the president. Roger's 78 and will go out and swim 10Ks as a 78-year-old, which is amazing. Um,
Awesome.
but yeah, we sent a team across now in January to World Ice Swimming Championships, and little New Zealand with a population of 5 million, um, I believe came fourth overall in the medals table at World Champs. So like all of our sport, I guess in New Zealand we bat a little bit above our weight class, and I think both Jim and I are pretty proud to be associated with that, and having been you know um, assisting to enable ice swimming in New Zealand, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a pretty
Yeah.
weird sport. I don't know if you've done any of it.
Not a, I swim through the winter and I love I haven't, I guess the short answer is no, I've not done like ice swimming competitions. I've been stepped out of my competition phase, but it pops, I see they stream them now. And so sometimes
Yeah,
it pops in my head, will I want to do something like that again? So I don't know. That's cool.
don't
Jim,
think about
maybe
it. Just do it. So
just do
yes,
it. Well, if it was more accessible to me, I mean, I'd have to create it. I mean, yeah, because
Yeah.
it's hard to, I'd have to travel to go do it. And I got kids and a job and, all the things. So, but I could see it in my future.
yes.
So like, do I want to go swim really far somewhere or go swim in some ice somewhere? You gotta make these choices.
Yes, yes. There's always those choices. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit about like your podcast and your goals with that and but I want to hear from Jim. What is swimming kind of like, I guess, how has it impacted your life? You said, you came from running and started swimming and it sounds like you found a lot of you've an amazing community that you've built, but like personally, like what has it empowered you to do in your life, like this relationship that you've built with the water?
So it is kind of interesting. I think that a lot of my life is I just enjoy challenges and I enjoy doing new things all the time. So I'm like many people, I'm a bit restless. I get into trouble at home because I'm not really able to relax very well. I'm always doing things. I've always got too many hobbies and too many projects on the go. So I think what swimming has really meant to me. I kind of mentioned it when I was talking about surf lifesaving. I enjoy seeing other people achieve things. I've never sort of classified myself as a super athlete or anything like that. I enjoy doing my own challenges, but I really enjoy helping other people to do things. I get a lot from that. We've done that in surf lifesaving. So Duncan and I are sort of got a little sort of side hustle going where we've been supporting people on doing some long marathon swims, helping people to swim around Rangitoto and Taupo and swims like that. So I thoroughly enjoy that. So I might not be swimming myself, but I actually get quite a buzz out of seeing other people achieve goals that they've set for themselves. So it's a bit of a sort of a roundabout way of doing it. So I do love being in the water, but I don't know if I'm going to have any really, really long swims in my future. I just,
You
you
will.
know,
You will. You just don't know it yet, but you will.
yeah, dunking around, I probably don't really have too much in the way of options. He'll take me 20 k's away from the ocean, from the land, and just say, "I'll see you back on shore."
Yeah.
That's me. So that's kind of where what it means for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me, about the podcast. Like, what made you guys start a podcast? What's
Well,
your goal?
that
Do you
was,
have a goal with it? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So we sort of coming back to getting more people in the water. So it's both. Um, New Zealand is a wonderful country, but we're not that dissimilar from the United States in some ways. We've got an awful lot of people who are overweight, not active enough, and I think that we're really kind of really interested in getting more people engaged with swimming and the water. So,
Mm-hmm.
really trying to, um, we are sort of, our podcast is mostly listened to by New Zealanders. So, just sharing local stories and getting local people coming through. We've spoken to some, amazing swimmers, but also, one of our better podcasts was just Shazil's mum Shamima, and just the story of what swimming has meant to her, because getting Shazil, who's a 25-year-old, very active young man who doesn't actually have a lot of opportunity to do things, is quite engaging. So, getting that story out, trying to support people to either start swimming, maybe move from the pool to the sea, or do more, or set their own challenges. Also, just from a personal point of view, I've thoroughly enjoyed the podcasting because we've ended up talking to some absolutely amazing people that I would never have had a chance to talk to otherwise, both locally and internationally. And I'm sure you've had the same sort of situation. You talk to somebody and you think that you know them kind of well, and you might have swum in the same squad, and then you have this conversation and you just learn so much about them. I find it truly sort of inspirational, and yeah, I kind of look at it as probably my fourth or fifth hobby that I need to sort of keep on doing. I loved getting into podcasting, both from the talking and aspect of it, but also all of the technical back end stuff that about, and how do you make it all happen. So I'm the kind of the backyard techie guy. My career has been in IT the whole time. I leave the creative side to the other clever dick over here. But between the two of us, I think it kind of works out kind of well. We sort of complement each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I love that so much. I think it's such an important time, I guess, in humanity to have a relationship with the water. So the more people that we can inspire, not scare away from the water, the better off we'll all be, right? So keep doing what you're doing, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We will. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop the recording there. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you were inspired by even just a moment of this story, please share it with a friend. You never know what might push someone out of their comfort zone so that they can find out what they're capable of. And please leave a review with your podcast provider. It truly helps others discover the raw and honest stories of these amazing endurance swimmers. Thanks for listening.